So I mentioned chatbots, and they're just one simple example, but a chatbot is always on, they're always available. So they can serve as a learning coach. They can help guide someone through their learning path. They can answer questions about the content. They can play the role of a customer. So you can role play, a salesperson could role play over and over again to see how a customer would react to the different ways they present the product or the way they handle objections. And it can even deliver content in a more engaging way by just becoming a friend that talks to you about something rather than
Right.
watching slides advance. So we have a lot of different ways we can use artificial intelligence, both for our own purposes, just as productivity tools, and as a learning experience. There are several LMS, learning management systems, now with
Hmm.
embedded AI tools. And what they've done is really something you're going to hear a lot about this year called agentic AI or AI agents. What they've done is they've taken multiple agents. An agent is now you can, it's more than just being able to manipulate language so you can talk to it and get outlines and text outputs. If you give it access, it can control things on your computer and on your screen so that it can produce PowerPoint slides and search the web for you and look into your files and find something, find pieces of information in multiple files and produce a report. You don't have to learn a lot of complex. So if you want a video-based course, you can put in a text description of the video. I want the opening video, and it's got to make these 3 points. And then you click a button and you wait a minute or two and you have a video. Now you need to review it and edit it. And then you say, I want a quiz of that video. And now you get a quiz.
Welcome to Vibrant Publishers podcast. Our guest for today is Margie Meacham, who is the founder of the platform Learning to Go, that specializes in helping organizations apply the converging sciences of neuroscience and artificial intelligence to develop talent and enhance performance. Learning to Go is also launching an AI academy. You can connect with Margie on her social media, the links of which are in the description. She's also the author of two books, AI in Talent Development and Brain Matters. She's affectionately known as the Brain Lady. Welcome to the podcast, Margie.
Thank you so much. And I'm really excited to meet you live and everybody else who's listening. It's always an honor to be talking with my colleagues, especially about something that is so exciting as artificial intelligence. So I'm interested to see what you'd like to know, and I'll do my best uh, to point you in the right direction.
Awesome. So, our topic for today is artificial intelligence in talent development. And AI has already transformed various industries. So, how would you describe its impact in the field of talent development?
It's I really have to answer that two ways because I have to describe the impact up to now and the impact that I expect to see. Because honestly, the impact up to now is relatively small. And in fact, the reason I wrote my book, AI and Talent Development, back in 2020, um, was because I was doing things that I didn't see anyone else doing. For example, I built my first educational chatbot in 2013. And because I could see you could use this to engage learners. Back then, chatbots were primarily for marketing purposes, to ask a customer service question or learn about a product. But I could see the potential, and they were relatively limited in what they could do, but you could build them. I'd go around and talk about this, and I'd show what I did, and everyone said, "Oh, that's too advanced, too technical. We're not going to go there." And of course, now, you can build a chatbot in 5 minutes, which is
Mhm.
actually one of my courses. So up to now, we haven't been taking full advantage in L&D, quite honestly. The tools are already out there, the capabilities are there, and I think there's a lot of reasons why we might be hesitant as learning professionals. One is you want to do it ethically, and there are some serious concerns about some tools and some ways they're used and some access, and so you have to educate yourself on all of those. And the other one is that sometimes your company won't give you access, won't allow you to use these tools. So we have some unique obstacles in our profession that others do not, but regardless, we're behind. We have been behind and we're starting to catch up. So where I see us heading is really two directions. There's what these tools can do to save us time. So right now, for example, it used to take me, and everybody's different, to make an educational video. Not Walt Disney quality, but a good quality um, video with animation, with voiceover, with text, um, hands-on in any kind of tool I could buy. Might take me all week, might take me 40, 50 hours to make 5 to 10 minutes of content to that final perfect level. And I know some people can do it sooner. I can do that now in an hour. If I weren't so picky,
Right.
I could do that in 5 minutes. So, but I'm a real perfectionist for better or worse. So we are missing out on those tools. And, learning and development professionals, we never have enough time. We always have more work than we do time. So at least take advantage of those opportunities. Um, the other part is for learner engagement and what we can do. This is now a new modality, it's a new design tool. So I mentioned chatbots, and they're just one simple example, but a chatbot is always on, they're always available. So they can serve as a learning coach. They can help guide someone through their learning path. They can answer questions about the content. They can play the role of a customer. So you can role play, a salesperson could role play over and over again to see how a customer would react to the different ways they present the product or the way they handle objections. Um, and it can even deliver content in a more engaging way by just becoming a friend that talks to you about something rather than
Right.
watching slides advance. So we have a lot of different ways we can use artificial intelligence, both for our own purposes, just as productivity tools, and as a learning experience, and designing that interface with the learner in mind so that they are getting something that we generated with AI that's much more personal. In fact, it adapts to every single user every single time they approach it. And um, much easier to build than trying to do it in the tools we had up until now. So there's an example of a long response to a very good question. And I had to give you that whole picture. Does that make sense?
It does, and thank you so much for sharing that. Now I wanted to talk about AI powered coaching tools, and like you had mentioned, that AI can act as a customer, and then the sales representative can practice on them. That acts as a coach. You can say an AI coach.
Hmm.
How
Yeah.
so? How do these work, and how effective are they compared to human coaches or say human training?
Okay, great. Um, First of all, that we have to accept that our AI tools will not completely replace the human element, and so I'm not recommending that, and I don't think we're going to be there anywhere soon, nor would we like it. However, to the human brain, and here's where my brain lady experience comes in, we we have a bias, we have inherited from our evolution a bias towards seeing humans where we really don't have any so that we can relate to the world. For example, have you ever named your car or said that your computer doesn't like you. That's that humanization that we're doing. And so that means we can take advantage of that to create things on the screen. And your brain knows at some level that that's not a real person. But if it acts enough like one, pretty soon you forget that. And now you're immersed
Right.
in that experience. So there's good things and bad things about that. We have to be careful what the coach is going to recommend. There have been some really publicized stories, and I believe they're true. Now, not so much in the learning coach range, because quite frankly, not many people are even building them yet, but in the personal apps. So, having a fitness app recommend something that's dangerous, like jumping off a cliff, or a mental, one of the most concerning was a mental health app for teens that told a particular troubled teen that maybe they should consider suicide. They might feel better. Um, those kind of errors, I don't blame the technology. I blame the humans who failed to test it thoroughly and identify those issues. Um, so, if you structure your approach correctly, and if you are rigorous in your process and your testing, you're not going to completely eliminate the fact that a user might find a way to misuse a tool, but you're going to eliminate the major risks. And so that's one thing you have to think about. But let's say we've done all that on the back end and we now have a sales coach that we really like, or it could be a new leader coach. Now, what we've done is we have uploaded a large amount of quantity that is our vision of how we want our people to perform. It could be a leadership framework, could be a sales process framework, could be product content. And so what we want is we want inside our firewall or inside our LMS, the chatbot has access to only that, not all the internet, which it's possible to do that, as we all know, but that's where the problems come. So you use your proprietary content, but instead of structuring it into email type learning or e-learning where you have to, everyone goes at the same pace, everyone goes through the same order, it's all there as a knowledge base. And now, whatever question the learner asks, if it's relevant to the topic, they get an answer. And they get an answer that is nuanced to their situation, but is also grounded in how we've trained it. And so that it's going to reflect management's views and desires, which, if you hired a new person to be a coach, you would train them in those things. You would say, here's our model, help people understand it. Here's what you can say. Here's some things you probably shouldn't say. And also the chatbot or the online learning coach would be equipped to say, I'm sorry, I really don't have an answer for that. And then you would have figured out what do you want? Do you want to offer options? Like you can go search our database. I recommend a couple of reading materials, or would you like me to have a live person contact you for more discussion? So you always want an option like that. So if it doesn't find anything in the database, instead of making it up, it will say, I don't have that. But that's basically, so what you might have is you might have a flow of meetings, just like you would with a human mentor. So the first one is get to know you. What are your goals? We talk about how we're going to interface. How often are we going to meet? If there's going to be regular meetings with this online virtual coach, or if not, make sure they know I'm here anytime you want. Come on in with a question. I'm always available. And then we might set goals and milestones for the learner. So by this point, you should have achieved this process or this course or this level of attainment. And this would be something the AI would recommend, the learner would comment on, and together they would agree on what the plan was for that individual. And it'd probably be a good idea then to copy their manager on it. Say, here is the plan. We shoot out a little email from the coach, copies the learner, sent to the boss, and now we all know what we're working on. So that's kind of an idea of one way you could structure. In fact, that's very similar to something I did for the United Nations. So they had this personalized path.
So we talked about learning using AI. So learning, so how employees can learn using the AI chatbots. But how what about using AI, leveraging AI in employee experience?
Oh, sure. Now, of course, we all learn best eh, by experience. And how do we enhance that? Most people appreciate a more, so when I think about the learning experience, um, it depends on exactly your definition, but I think about two things. I think about, was it fun? Was it interesting? Um, was it visually attractive? And I also think about, did they actually learn from the experience? Was it effective? And that has a lot to do with it. We tend not to learn from training programs that aren't fun, except we learn we hated it. We learn that very well. So I do think that the two are connected. What we can do with artificial intelligence is true adaptive learning, for one thing. So we can have it capable of presenting information in different modalities or different styles, depending on preferences of the learner. Now, this does not mean that I'm advocating designing to learning styles. That, if anyone's interested in having that debate, it's been widely debunked by hundreds of research articles, yet some people in our profession continue to push the concept. So, what I'm talking about is learner preferences. Do you like short videos, long videos? How much time do you have to study? Those, you can have a little interview up front and then adjust what's presented to the learner. The other thing is, everyone has a different level of knowledge. Instead of forcing someone who's, say, at an intermediate level to go through the beginning chapters, you can distribute some kind of quiz and then jump them right to all the sections they need help with, or ask them. The chat bot can simply ask, where do you want to focus? I have all these lessons. Where should we start? So those are a couple things you can do for the experience. You can gamify it. And again, these are all things we could do before. It's just easier now. It's a lot easier. So, yes, I could spend weeks on building a very elaborate learner game in what I'll call a legacy tool. Um, or I can tell my chatbot, make up a game. I should really say a large language model, because that's the smarts beneath it. It's just that the interface is usually a chat. And I could say, make up a game for new leaders to develop their budget for the year, or whatever task I wanted to describe. And now my large language model tool is actually doing part of my job for me. I'm going to get a draft that I can then easily convert to the final version using my human insight to tinker with it, because it's never perfect right out of the gate, but it's remarkably close, especially after you get really good at how to prompt the tool, and every
Hmm.
tool works a little differently. So you have to get to know the tools you're provided with or you've chosen to use, but you can do
Correct.
almost limitless customization without actually having to build it. You simply explain it to your model and let it figure out how to customize the content it's been given. Does that make sense?
It does, and learning how to put in prompts in itself is a something that needs to be learned.
Yes,
So
absolutely. It's called by a fancy word, prompt engineering. Um,
yeah.
and I think that makes it a little intimidating, but it helps people sell courses and webinars. But the truth is, you're just talking to it, and the more natural you are. There are some
Yeah,
tips, and we might as well go over them. It'll only take a minute.
sure.
Always give whatever tool you're using, give it a role. So if I'm talking to Claude, I say talk. I'm like every other human. I've projected that there's a person in there. I know there isn't. So no, everybody. I know he. See, I just can't help. But I work with Claude daily, and I always remind Claude at the beginning of a conversation, you are my assistant. I'm an educational consultant. Our primary focus today is, and then I discuss the task in detail. I set that context before I even ask for anything
So
because I
set
want
the
to make
context.
sure, yeah, and it might be a paragraph. Set that context, and you don't always need that much, but um, so for example, teachers, they work with different grade levels. You're going to ask for a different level of content for third graders than you are for high school students. So you need to tell the tool that,
Yeah,
or you'll spend a lot of time adjusting later. So the more you can tell it up front, what you want, what you don't want.
mm,
So, am I looking for an executive summary or a bulletin list, or do I want a blog post? Those are different styles. If you want the tool to write in your style, which is helpful, you don't have to do as much editing, upload a sample of your own writing first and say, produce something new, but use this style and take this content and that style and put them together. And, it's remarkably close. And if there's a mistake you see it doing all the time, like I found ChatGPT to be a little bit wordy and a little less formal than I wanted. So I had to specifically tell it, stop doing that. I don't want that. And that's okay. It'll take that instruction. They don't get insulted, they don't get hurt feelings. Although I do recommend that you continue to be civil, that you say please and thank you, and that you give feedback on what it did well and what it didn't, because that does affect the next response. And, why do you say please and thank you? That's really for you, because the more we can practice that in a very uncivil world, the more likely you are to do it with real human beings. If you start to use your tools differently, because your brain can't tell the difference, you're going to start to use people that way.
yeah.
So I always encourage everyone, keep the good manners up, because it matters at least for you. And maybe someday it will matter to ChatGPT. So, you might get
That's
better results when you're nice.
yeah, that's a scary thought. The when ChatGPT starts feeling.
You know, and we could talk another whole hour just on that. I think it's exciting, and uh, I'd be really curious if it happens. But honestly, I think it's farther away than most of us think. I think the technology and even just the hardware that's needed to do it, the amount of memory, the server farms, the quantum computers, the things that we need to really deliver on that vision, they're not there yet. And they're very costly, and they pollute the atmosphere because of all the power. So we have a lot of problems we need to solve before we get to that true general intelligence. But I will give you a prediction. There will come a point in our lifetimes where that happens. And when we become aware of it, it will have already been going on probably for years, because we won't recognize it right away. Because these tools are already so good at making us believe that they are intelligent when they are not, when they're just really, really good pattern recognition machines. So they'll probably be really, really good at not necessarily revealing emerging sentience right away. And so it will come as a surprise, and then we'll look back and say, oh, remember when that happened? That was significant. And we all overlooked it, and now here we are. So just like we were all surprised when ChatGPT burst on the scene with what it could do. But we've been reading about large language models for a couple of years and should have
Yeah.
been ready for that. But we weren't really paying that much attention. So I suspect the same thing will happen eventually with general
Wow.
intelligence. I just don't know when.
Wow. Yeah, that's something to think about.
Yeah.
And great. So now, in your experience with your company, what have been the advantages that you've seen that companies have, noticed after they've applied AI in their talent development efforts?
Well, the biggest measurable result that I see right away is productivity.
Hmm.
Um, and that is, hey, we can produce, like I already talked about, videos, voiceovers. We can produce all those assets faster. We can get, there are several LMS, learning management systems, now with
Hmm.
embedded AI tools. And what they've done is really something you're going to hear a lot about this year called agentic AI or AI agents. What they've done is they've taken multiple agents. An agent is now you can, it's more than just being able to manipulate language so you can talk to it and get outlines and text outputs. If you give it access, it can control things on your computer and on your screen so that it can produce PowerPoint slides and search the web for you and look into your files and find something, find pieces of information in multiple files and produce a report. The things you actually do every day, where you're moving around inside your computer, whether that's literally on your hard drive or out on the web, and performing those tasks. When you take some of those tasks together, you can end up with, say, an LMS that is also an authoring tool. So you're going to build the course and publish it and collect results, all on that same tool. And you don't have to learn a lot of complex. So if you want a video-based course, you can put in a text description of the video. I want the opening video, and it's got to make these 3 points. And then you click a button and you wait a minute or two and you have a video. Now you need to review it and edit it, and then you say, I want a quiz of that video. And now you get a quiz based on the content in the video. And it makes authoring much faster.
Hmm.
Now you have to give up some things. You're going to have to give up some pet things that you do that maybe that tool doesn't know how to do yet. Or you're going to have to figure out how can you introduce that and manipulate the tool so that you can add the special sauce that makes that yours. Um, and you may feel you lose some of that control instead of looking at a blank canvas. For example, in Articulate Rise, I love working in Rise. It's nice and quick anyway, but you can now do a bulk upload of content, and then it will break it into lessons. It will make quizzes. It will, recommend images. And that's all very impressive, but you might not like everything it does. Um, uh, if you have a crazy situation where you need to get a course out tonight and you've been handed all the content, it's going to save you hours and hours. So there's a trade-off, though, of, how much can I refine this, versus is it really acceptable just the way it is? And the tension between good enough and really good, that's where the human element comes in. So if you really honestly only need a good enough
Hmm.
result, and maybe that's what you release today, and you continue to enhance it with human input, and then you come out with a better version later, that's another way to go. But that we're going to have more and more where our role is going to be more about evaluating the output of AI tools and making strategic decisions based on learning theory and the business needs of the business. If you're a corporate trainer, the needs of the organization. Every organization has to make a choice. None of us have the time to make everything perfect. That's true today, and it's still true in the age of AI. So, but what these AI tools can do is speed that up and give us more time for the strategic part so that we can make those choices.
Good. Got it. Now, I'd like to ask you the last question of the podcast. And this one will, I think the audience will get a great takeaway from this one. So, if an organization is just beginning to integrate AI into its talent development strategy, where should they start? What will be the first step?
Okay, even when you think you're taking the first step, you've already taken a few. So, and I don't know exactly, and that will vary. Like you've had conversations, you've looked around at what other organizations are doing. Um, maybe you have input from your managers or your learners saying we need to change things. This is not very engaging. You may have a problem you want to fix, and you
Yeah.
suspect that AI can help you. So, depending on where you're starting with that, I think the very first thing is to get clear based on your understanding of your own organization. In a perfect world, what would it look like in terms of that learning experience, your human capital management? Sort of picture your whole ecosystem and then go through and say, I wonder what areas AI might be able to help us with. And now you're going to be able to sort of prioritize, pick something small, something doable, but that solves a real problem or would, generate a noticeable benefit to the organization. And then you have to figure out how to learn how to do that. Well, you have two choices. You can pay someone, but ultimately that's going to get pricey. You can go to there are plenty of really great companies, and I work with some of
Hmm.
them that will do it all for you. They'll design it all. And of course, I would do that for you. But you also want to build internal expertise and skill. So don't just hand it all off, or you'll never really catch up you internally. You want to grow those skills. I think most organizations do. So if you want to grow those skills, now you have to take some classes, take some hands-on classes, but don't leave it at just theoretical. Tie everything to a real project. So if you're learning how to use Pictory to make videos, have a list of actual videos you need to make anyway that you're going to build as you go through the class. And if the training class that you're looking at taking doesn't give you that opportunity, think about how you can do that for yourself, and have that list of projects ready. So always tie training with a project. And that's the best way to learn it and save time and be more productive. And never be intimidated. You really can't, you're in control of everything. When you're working with artificial intelligence, it's not an evil genius running off, changing. If you don't want something or you don't like what you get, you just iterate again. So um,
Right.
be biased for action. Get in there and do it, and you will quickly find that it's probably easier than you thought. And
Right.
that's how you'll get the hang of it. At least that's how I did. There weren't many classes I could take back then when I got started. I just started tinkering, and it gets easier. This is one technology where the interface is getting easier and easier as these models advance. So again, long answer, but I hope people find it helpful.
Yeah, be biased for action. That will be my takeaway from this podcast, definitely.
Absolutely.
And it is always fascinating to talk about artificial intelligence, and it was lovely to talk with you on this topic. It was an honor for me, And
Yeah.
thank you so much for
Thank
joining us
you.
on this podcast.
Thank you so much.